Have you ever thought that you might have a small bladder? Or you may have been told that you have a small bladder because you have to go pee so often. Well, it's probably not true. Most of us, the vast majority of us, have a really normal sized bladder, and it can vary a little bit within that range. Now, if you find that you have to go pee quite often because of your small bladder, it might be three things that you want to look at. So the first thing that happens when we have urgency and it makes us feel like we have to go pee a lot is maybe there's something that you're eating that is aggravating the bladder. So the mucosa on the inside of the bladder can get irritated sometimes by different foods. And you could be fine with a certain food all the way up until maybe in your perimenopausal years or after having babies, and things can change, such as coffee. So I'm one of those people that I loved 4 cups of coffee a day. I just love my coffee. But as I got into my 40s, that became more aggravating to my bladder. I found like I really had to go pee all the time. So I started cutting out that afternoon coffee, one of them, and then one of the morning ones, and then the third one I cut out in the afternoon. And so now I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning. And that usually is what we would advise as kind of your max if you're having some urgency and bladder issues. So it's one of the more common things that can irritate a bladder. So looking at your foods, such as, does alcohol make you feel like you have to go pee a whole bunch, particularly at nighttime? Does coffee give you a lot of urgency, so you pee quite a lot during the morning after you've had your morning cup potentially? Like caffeine as well, so having teas, black teas, having even green teas, caffeinated beverages such as pops and like Pepsi and Coke and things can also irritate the bladder. And there's other ones that I've talked about on other videos, like citrus and vinegar and carbonated beverages. So you may be sort of filling that bladder up with things that actually aggravate it. The other thing is that potentially you have trained your body to go pee more often. And now what do I mean by that? So your bladder has stretch receptors, and as the bladder fills up, the little stretch receptors will stretch, and they send a little signal to your brain and then back down, and it says, hey, our bladder's getting full, and you feel the urgency. You feel, oh yeah, I feel like I have to go pee now. And that's normal. We need to do that. When the bladder's filling up, we need to make sure that we can feel it so that we can go pee. But sometimes if you go pee, I'll just go pee just in case I have to go longer on my shopping trip than I think I am. So you start doing the just in case pees. You leave the house, you go pee, you get to the gym 20 minutes later, you go pee just before you go into the exercise class, then you go pee right after the exercise class because you're going to go out with a friend and go grab a cup of coffee. So you go pee before you go to the coffee, you go pee at the coffee shop, etc. You're training your bladder to actually void at smaller and smaller volumes. And we feel it. It's not like you don't feel the urgency. It's true because your stretch receptors are going, hey, we got 100 mils in here. We need to go pee. So you feel the urgency, and then you're like, hey, I went pee. And people come to see me. They say, Kristen, I go though. When I feel the urgency and I go pee, there is something there. Or they'll count. They'll say, oh, it took 6 seconds to go pee, but it might be a really, really slow stream. So it's not the best way of sort of figuring out whether there's a lot of volume. It'd be better just to measure it in a measuring cup. Now, the third reason is that potentially you have a tighter pelvic floor. And you've heard me talk about this before because it's one of the main things that I do. So if the pelvic floor is tight, then it can kind of squash things in there, and it can make it feel like you have pressure on your bladder, and it can even cause things like constipation and pressure there too. And there are other reasons why we have urgency. Sometimes we'll have a prolapse of the rectum and there's poop sitting in there that kind of pushes on the bladder, or it may be other factors, medical factors too. So again, let's sort of summarize that. So first, maybe the bladder doesn't like what you're putting in it and it's getting irritated. So the muscle of the bladder, the detrusor muscle, will contract and try and get rid of it. Or you have trained yourself because maybe you've had incontinence in the past and you make sure that your bladder's never full. Or maybe you are just going because you do the just in case and then it becomes more common for you to go pee. Or you have a tight pelvic floor and that's squashing things in there. So how much should you go pee? Well, we're going to want to go around 6 to 8 times in a day, or even 7 to 9 times, depending on what country you're really trained in. But I usually say 6 to 8 times, and that includes a 24-hour period. So it includes the nighttime one as well. Let's say you get up once at night to go pee too. So if you're having, say, 2 liters of water in a day, or you're having your 8 cups, if you're peeing out 6 times, well, it's like 300 and whatever, 30 mils or something like that. You can tell me below exactly how many mils it is off the top of my head. And how much do we really want to be voiding in a time? Well, we definitely don't want to be voiding our bladder with like only 100 mils in there, or, 200 mils even. We're trying to get to those larger volumes, like 300 or 400 mils, where we really feel like, oh yeah, there's enough pee in there that I can go to the toilet. So usually around that 300 mils, our bodies go, yeah. So just over a cup. Like, yeah, I have to go. Yeah, I could go. And then you're like, I could probably hold it though. I just have to make this phone call, or I just got to finish with this client. And then I'll go afterwards. And if you were to measure, maybe you have 350 mils in there, and that would be great. So what happens sometimes when we have a small bladder is that my clients will want to decrease their fluid. Now, this is a problem, right? I'm talking about water and things that don't irritate your bladder. So they start to decrease their fluid because they don't want to have to go pee all the time, especially if they're traveling, like in a car, or they're flying. The last thing they want to do is having to get up and find a toilet or get out of the car and try and go pee in the bush or something. So that is a problem because concentrated urine, so when you don't drink too much, when your fluid volumes are low, that concentrated urine can also irritate the bladder, and then you have more urgency. So we want to increase your fluid volumes back to, say, 2 liters of water a day. And people say, well, I have lots of soups and I have lots of salads. I'm like, that's great, fine. We can just add that to the fluid volumes. Now, some of us, we know that we can do 1.5 to 2 liters. Well, 1.5 usually is someone who's maybe a little older, not having a busy day. They might be more of the sitting on the couch and watching things and just puttering about the house. Well, that's probably enough. But if you go for a walk or you're busy at work, maybe you get to 2 liters. Or myself, I feel like 2.5 liters is really great because I'm busy at my work and I'm moving around and showing people exercises and whatnot. And 2.5 liters makes it so that I feel like I'm getting a good volume of pee when I pee. And that's what I ask my clients to do. So try and get their water volumes up. Try to think about distracting and deferring. Like, could I hold it just a few more minutes? Can I just try and see if I can allow my bladder to get a little bit more full? And maybe just, oh, you know what? Yeah, when I have coffee or when I have a drink in the evening, like say a glass of wine, wow, do I ever have to go pee a lot? Well, they may be your bladder triggers, and not everyone has them. Some people have 0, right? They're great. But usually as we get older, things get a little bit more able to be irritated, let's say, not just our mood. And we really want to try to get rid of that irritation in our bladder. So I hope that has helped. I hope that you don't continue with the idea that you have a small bladder, because usually it actually gets worse as we get older. So instead of going pee 8 times, then all of a sudden it's 10 times, and then we're going pee 3 times at night, and then we're going pee, 12 times during the day, because the stretch receptors are so strong, and we keep on, peeing more and more often during the day. So please take that advice and maybe think about whether you might have some triggers, whether you might have a tight pelvic floor, which we have talked about in other videos, and whether you can maybe change the way that you're voiding the bladder and just allowing it to fill up a little bit more. Okay, I hope that helps. Good luck with everything, and please let me know in the comments below whether you want me to elaborate on any of that. I know it's a lot of information at once, but I hope you do well, and all the best. Okay.